Oh, well, hello, Josh, and hello, everyone out there. I am your host, Melanie Blankenship, of this fun Nature's Neighbor podcast here on Monday, May 12th at the new time of 5 o'clock. And I'm sitting here with my co-host. I can call you that officially now, Josh Carmichael Environmental, and now also of Nature's Neighbor. Josh, happy Monday in the middle of May already. And I'm
happy day after Mother's Day. And
yes,
2 days after Mexican Mother's Day, if you celebrate that one.
Yep.
A week and a day after Spanish Mother's Day, I found out this year.
Yeah, it is. And you know that it was May 8th. That's my birthday.
Birthday
too.
So
I got Mexican Mother's Day, I got my birthday, and I got Mother's Day all in the whole weekend thing.
And you're still standing. Good job.
I'm still standing and super happy, grateful for the time and the acknowledgement of my best important job was to be a mother, right? And then that birthday, I'm just counting down now. I'm at that halfway point. I need about another 100 years to conquer all the things I want to get done. But,
this is a life and a half left.
It is. And this world is funny. We talk a little bit before the show. And do we come in with the plan? Well, Josh and I are good about flying by the seat of our pants. But the topic I really want to talk about, because it's kind of stewing in me a little bit, but it's an ongoing debate. It's an ongoing question. It's an ongoing misunderstanding of methods of farming. You started a little bit of the topic when you walked in today, talking about potentials of a plot of growing, and what's my comment? The soil, and then the surrounding areas. I was down in this area. We're not going to say names yet, but I was down in this area this morning, and just noticing the wind tunnel and the fog and the mold carrying properties that temperature brings to that soil. But it's that area that you're talking about is known to be as community, right? Mm-hmm. But does community mean organic? Does community actually mean that it's symbiotic to nature? Does community mean that we're being honest and transparent in the way that we are producing, representing, and honoring Mother Nature? And I'm coming with that because we did just celebrate Mother's Day. And yes, I was super honored to carry that title. I miss my mom because my mom is in the atmosphere as my spirit now. Mm-hmm. And, but at the same time, I live, with Mother Nature every day. So I'm honoring her at the best of my abilities. But I'm also trying to become more aware of nature, trying to, create this, island in a sense, my little island, to be able to celebrate nature, honor nature, live within its means of nature without destroying it. But you and I both know we can't even walk or breathe without destroying something of nature, because there's so many things that in nature we haven't even identified yet, right? But at the same time, what does all of this mean? And I'm going with this topic because of how many people will do the comment that I heard this week. Oh, she does that organic stuff. Oh, well, such and such has that little organic farm. Well, what does that mean? Oh, I only buy organic. I only buy, this organic or that organic. Well, what does any of this mean? Or I'm only supplying certified organic. What does that mean? I'm getting that.
What a can of worms we're opening.
I'm opening the can of worms, and it's because why are we so disconnected in this word?
Yeah, I feel like, really interesting looking at the history of organics. Some friends at Cal Poly that would do a class on that. And so just really looking at when the U.S. left organic farming was in around the 1920s, and Europe stayed with those inputs. And so a lot of the old farmers in America would say, oh, you can't be using all these synthetic inputs, or that's never going to last. And, we're hitting a wall, really hard now that we've gone down that path for 100 years.
Yeah.
And I think that, my thing has really been, kind of peeling back the layers of our, like you said, sort of existence or our humanity, and how do we connect into a place and really become part of a community. Yeah. And I think that I learned that so much through ecology, just studying kind of like you're an individual of a group, of a population, and those things really simplify, how we can understand where we are. And so more and more, we've been doing a lot of things with like, we live in such a beautiful area that we can, not really have to grow anything and still be well fed. All the things from the ocean that taste good, all the things in the hills that we still have that are, there from the forest to the chaparral to a riparian forest and streams. We have so much food and things that are already here, food, medicine, and, the inputs that keep us alive, cleaning our air and everything, that before we even touch the ground, there's already things that we should know how to harvest or, really reap the benefits of. And so that's something I've been looking at more and more. And even just perennial farming, as I got into permaculture more and more over the last, 20, 25 years, it was like, how can we do more things perennially where you're not having to do as much inputs and you're getting those max outputs?
So you just hit on something, again, another comment that came to me. A long time farmer, rancher, orchard owner in the Central Valley. I've known him since farmers market years so I just celebrated my 50th. I met him, I think, when I was 19. Okay. So, this is
most of your life.
Most of my life. I had the yearly conversation is late this year because he always calls me usually the 1st of May and says, "Hey Mel, we're about a week away from harvesting apricots, peaches, nectarines, plums, all of that starts to come right after apricots." His neighbor to the north, good friend of him, I think they're related, not sure, but they look similar. So I thought that they might be related, and they're both honorier than Sen. So I think they have to be related somehow. It runs the blood. He produces cherries. He's up more like by Dixon.
Okay.
He's up in those areas. He does cherries, and then he does, different types of nut trees and stuff. So these two have been brokering fruit with me for years, meaning, okay, so they've been growing it. I call them up. We talk about, the minimal, that I can get in a day delivery, and they bring the refrigerated truck over. And I purposely pick from these guys because they've been farming since the 40s.
Wow.
And, they're so honest. I love walking their orchards. I love walking all the farms that they have accumulated over time in their family, right? Large property owners in the Central Valley. Okay. I'm just going to put it that way. But they're transparent about everything that they do. "Oh, Melanie, you don't want those this year." "Why do I not want these?" "We had peach leaf curl. We couldn't afford to do it naturally. We used, this," and they showed me what they use, how it breaks down, where's the residual on it. Totally honest and transparent. You want to know something sad? Still carries a certified organics label on it. So, but yet they tell me you don't want that, right? Because they know what I'm looking for. But then we also have started having that discussion. Well, if temperatures start rising, at the certain time, we applied this, it broke down, there is no residual, and so you're talking to somebody who's avid about not having residual of synthetics or chemicals that you and I both know are toxic and that are dangerous. But yet most people in our society have no clue what any of this means. They're just buying a label. Yeah. They're just buying that organic label. But yet having the relationship with my food producers, we have the extension of that conversation of, "No, Melanie, yes, it has a label, but you don't want this." You know what I mean? Because they're not sure at this point, because we haven't received the proper temperatures, if there's going to be residual or not. They're not testing. They're allowed to go out and get the permit, use it, but they don't know if the residual is there or not. But it is okay under organic standards, but there's still a residual.
Yeah.
There's still a synthetic that is being allowed to be used. It makes me sad because it was like, thinking about all the beneficials that were, suffocated. Yeah. And what's sad is that a majority of these guys' fruits go to Walmart distribution, which then go to Trader Joe's, Aldi. They go Whole Foods. That's where a majority of this fruit is going. So for me to get a truckload is like, kind of, I'm kind of special because
Yeah.
most people can't touch this stuff. And this is beautiful, wholesome, long-term food that has been being grown in the Central Valley. Sadly, I am walking these fields with 90-year-olds, both of them.
Yeah.
And I'm sad because it's like nobody's carrying this on. And so they already are talking about, because of the water issues or because of, just land use issues, that they're going to start ripping out their perennial farms, right? And people don't realize that these fruit trees have been there 30, 50 years. And now they're really starting to produce, really starting to, grab a hold and really be this production, right? But the sad thing is also with this is like, okay, why did they spray? Well, the wind blows, fungus moves, right? And they're saying it's been so cold, they're not getting their normal valley dry heat or the heat that they normally get, that, the curl is more intense this year than they've ever seen.
Yeah,
and so,
sort of a late winter or something.
It is. It's been a struggle. So where I'm seeing this is, it's like, how awesome is it that they're willing to be that honest with me, right?
Yeah.
But I wish that as a society we could get outside of this concept of marketing and labels and actually know what it is. What is it? What we are trying to ask for? Community food should be the most transparent. It should be the most honest. It should be the most reliable, right? Because we should have a system in place that is feeding communities. I don't care where you are in this country. Yes, I'm sorry, but like when you're in Alaska or you're up in the northern hemisphere, you're not going to get apricots first pick off the season, but you're going to get apricots, because I know in Idaho we grow beautiful apricots, but they don't come off until the end of July for their first harvest, and they're usually done by the middle of
short seasons,
August. Where I'm still getting them in October.
Yeah.
So there's the benefits of where we choose to call home, right? But at the same time, where do we as a society really start defining what it is we're doing? Because a little bit back history. So many, many moons ago, I just shared it on social media, on Facebook. I was a part of a platform at Cal Poly. It was where the topic of the platform was how technology plays a role in our future of food, right? And so I was brought in as an organic farmer, the biodynamic farmer, to be on this platform. I got to sit next to a really good friend of mine named Tom Akita, who is Aurora Grande. Old family farm. But they're conventional, always have been, always open to the conversation, but always still continue to be that conventional farmer. I have so much respect and love for that man because he's honest and he's transparent. He produces beautiful food. Is it something that I'm going to bring into my home? No, but I will support it because he is that person. He's that person that deserves our community support and what he's doing. I got to sit on this panel with Tim LaSalle. Tim LaSalle was old soil professors at Cal Poly. And then a gentleman who is the chemist for Monsanto at that time. Remember, Monsanto is not Monsanto anymore. It's Bayer. Bayer bought out Monsanto. Bayer aspirin. Bayer is Monsanto. And then another marketing in the world of technology was on that panel. We talked about how, in a way, I'll just put it out there. My methods, my way of living, this was done 10 years ago, okay? But my way of promoting wholesome food, my way of promoting do-it-yourself kind of farming, put your hands in the soil to understand the concept of your food. Be a part of the growth of your food, the manufacturing of your food. Do you have to do it all? No, you don't have to, because we're American and we're so fortunate to what we don't have to. But you have to have some kind of concept in your food and health, right? You have to take responsibility to feed yourself, right? That's my method, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
all things we should be.
Well, but I mean, food and health, right?
More,
okay. Food and health is food was the topic on this panel. And I was sitting up there, Tim was very anti-Monsanto, right? And he went after him and he went back after them. But it was crazy because in that crowd was Cal Poly students. I had a handful of people, in the Chumash Auditorium. The place was packed for this thing. I had a handful of people that stood up and told me, thank you for speaking up. And they were, excited to meet me and be able to talk about my farm and the farms that I work with. And we did. There was that handful of people that I'm still in contact with 10 years later. But majority of people that were in that audience and the majority of the overall platform of that panel was that I was irrelevant. I was going out of style. I was going nowhere. Nobody was going to want to take responsibility for their own health. They were going to rely on systems of universities or systems of marketing, systems of Wall Street,
Big Pharma,
to be able to feed themselves or to be able to take care of their health. And all I have to say is, where are we now? What are we doing? We have a new administration that is all about tallow. I'm just going to say that because it just drives me crazy that everybody now all of a sudden wants to talk about tallow. But at the same time, it's talking about your own health. We have a new health administrator that she was on another talk show, and I shared her comment on social media because what I'm going to put out there today is like, it still gives me chills. It talked about medicine and why did we take out nature and something natural out of our medicine? We need to bring our symbiotic system back with nature. What you're feeling in weather, what you're feeling in the air that we breathe, the soils that we're standing on. Are we really going to have an administration that's going to talk like this? Like, this is a dream, right? Mm-hmm. 10 years later, after that platform at Cal Poly that I stood at, I'm irrelevant. But yet what it was is take responsibility for your own food and your own health. That's where my stance was. That's where I still am standing. And that's what I'm still willing to teach. That is what I'm still willing to be a part of. I am not here to say I'm going to be the next, coffee shop with organic food in it, or I'm going to be the new, stand. I am willing to work with individuals to feed themselves, to teach them though, how did that food actually really get there? Not a label. Don't walk into a store and shop by a label. Walk into a store and eat and shop by the season.
Yeah, I love
shop by
taking
knowing
labels
where
off
it
things that
came.
way.
Yeah, shop by knowing where it came from.
Yeah, I think that really as we get to a point where people, are so worried about the cost of things, or we're worried about who's going to produce that food as we're losing, farmers. The average age is at least 60 something, if not older, with the generations that really knew what they're doing. So it's going to have to be in our hands again as community members. And how can we support our communities or the people that we know and love in, having the best health possible, our children, elderly especially, and ourselves. And the effects are so, sort of long, lasting, or so sort of long term, that people don't really say, oh, if I eat conventional now, or they do it for so long, then they, don't understand that, okay, when they hit a certain point, they're going to have some sort of health issues or certain moments that are going to cause really big issues. And so, that's when people finally turn to something, that is more organically produced. But if we're doing it at a scale that's smaller and people are understanding what inputs are needed or what they are putting into it, then it's going to have that residual health, kind of boost to it. So that's where I think that, we're going to really need to see people look to food as medicine and understand hopefully more what that truly means. I know a lot of cultures and, friends I work with, especially like Mexicanos, they're like, my mom, if I was sick, they went to the garden in the front yard first, and they knew what herbs to put into a tea. Mm-hmm. And, so many friends I work with, that do herbalism and things that way, where they can really, take care of those that they love by, putting the right kind of infusions and things together with a real simple, trip down to the
Isn't it
creek
crazy
bank
to
or
think
something.
that, like, in the medieval times, but even as writings up into like the late 1800s, that people that chose to eat from the earth or chose to medicine themselves from the earth was in a form of witchcraft? Isn't that crazy? Like to think of like how we
It's definitely magical.
right? I mean, medicine is everything, right? I mean, to take a situation of a human body that is imbalanced, right? Because that's what health is about. It's about balance, right? And when you get imbalanced, issues start to happen, right? And as simple as a plant or a root or something of, natural from nature could actually heal you.
I think even just fasting, just not eating so much or so often is something that our bodies weren't made for, or how to hold on to the certain calories that we're taking in. There's so many layers to this onion as you unravel it. I think that's where people start to find inaction or, just sort of going along with the flow, hoping that
just
they'll be taken care of. But I think, if we really start at the plate, I feel like, it's such a deep, sort of rooted issue of, you can speak to the politics, you can speak to the economics, you can speak to the health, or all these different, kind of moments from what we're putting into our bodies. And so from that plate, where do these things trace back that we're putting into it, and how and why? And so I think that's something I really, thought more and more about our platform here, and how can we talk about, really producing, food for, our families
but it's beyond,
farms and
our families,
forests.
How do we carry this on? Because, you and I first started our first conversation, I was saying the same thing. Like, I cannot get over how the same topic is there. There's a generation that is aging out, and there's not a generation that is carrying this on. And I'm trying to figure out, and it's incredibly overwhelming. I'll be honest with you. It kind of just pulls at my heart to see my friends, many of them, at this age of life, and I am not blood, but they treat me like I am their child, but their children are not there.
Yeah.
There's become this society that their parents work so hard and so much that they weren't going to work as hard as their parents, kind of thing, And, here I am bebopping through these orchards with these, two Armenian men that, they're like, Melanie, you need to eat this. And I'm like, what is it? And, they're teaching me even still after all these years, and it's like that phone call that I get of that invitation to come, and every year. It's like, if he doesn't call me in the first 2 weeks of May, I don't know what I'm going to do. I might lose it, because it was like this kind of a sense of warming that came over, and I'm like, oh, we're back in season. And the conversation, and the craziness is like, we then go to the orchards and we check things out, and then we go down the street and we talk to another one, we talk to another, and not all these guys still know each other, and it's like, oh, the trucks haven't come in, the distribution trucks haven't come in, and they're all getting ready for the seasons to start, and all of them, Josh, all of them are in that same age. And it's like, they say they have them all in family trust, but they're all talking about how are the next generation going to be able to afford this, not knowing, because they didn't follow them. They all went to college. Yeah. They all got a different career. They all are doing something different. They're not farming. These guys know the soil. They know the trees. They know the species. They know how to take care of it differently.
They know the changing seasons, they know the solutions to those
but issues. Even if those next generations came in now, how do we save this? Yeah. That's where, but yet here I am saying, being on that panel, that was what I was maybe didn't come across, was there needs to be this. Yes, this technology. Yes, I'm not going to be the one that says, oh, we don't need it. Yes, we do. I mean, look what we do. I mean, we need it. But at the same time, where's the irrelevance in this versus the long-term survival of knowing that I had the responsibility of my own health and in my own farming, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out and have a garden and everybody needs, but the disconnect, I truly believe, is rules and regulations. It's labeling. It's, I know, like for us, we can't just have people out on our farm. We can't afford the insurance of the liability on the farm. What happens when that pig breaks out or the cow or the rattlesnake? Like I can't afford the insurance to be able to bring people out to the farm and have them be a part of it. How do I afford workman's comp? How do I afford to teach these people how to carry it on? And so what I'm saying, I'm asking, not just you, but I'm asking the community, what is it that we need to do to bring the connection back to people to have their own responsibility for their food, how it's farmed, whether it's you getting out into the soil, but also in your own health. Yes, we have been very fortunate to be able to just go to the doctor and get a diagnosis and pop a pill and carry on, right? But all of us are starting to see that change. We're seeing it fast.
Yeah.
Nobody can afford their health care anymore. Sadly.
Well, they're starting to unravel, I think, some of those diseases. I've been hearing more and more about dementia and things, and where it's like, okay, exercise is a huge tool towards that, or hearing loss triggers things. There's so many things that we can do that are more subtle and more natural, all these ways of getting back. And I think, for people to be more involved in the processing of their food and medicine, it really just comes down to a lot of time. And I'm hoping that, without maybe having them at the, impetus or the real field level, if there's at least something where people are gathering with the harvest or processing those things in. Whenever we've done anything with, any kind of native foods, it's been, okay, acorns or toyons or something that takes many hands. And so it takes a lot of people to process that, to turn it into something more. And that's where you have, again, all those different benefits, hopefully, that come together. You have an economics and saving, money on doing the processing. You have the social benefit of people coming together and connecting and sharing, their resources. And then environmentally, hopefully, we are doing good things with our land use, so that we can manage our health as a reflection of that.
Josh, have you been listening to the County Board of Supervisors meetings or the city of Paso or Atascadero?
Not lately.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, good advice.
Because that's not happening. It's not. And with
it's not coming from the top down, like I said.
And but the thing is we're so about reactive instead of, preventative.
It's very Western culture.
And so like everything now is, fire or, this or that, destruction of your home. None of us can afford fire insurance, so, how
no
are
one's
you
going out and managing the hills anytime soon. They don't even see the connection point there.
Nope.
So
we're
a little ways
disconnected.
off here.
But I think if we bring it back to center, and the center being, instead of looking at, the tariffs or, Mexico versus Canada and all these other places, China, that have been feeding us, what if we just start focusing back on that responsibility of knowing the season of where you live and eating seasonally, right? And start pushing that demand of seasonal.
And less.
People, I know I could go out with a lot less of consumption.
Yeah.
I think all of us can.
I think in this country,
And I think that's a huge, fear. We talk about food insecurities. We talk about, all these things that go on. But I think a lot of us are, we've become that custom that we have to have 3 meals a day, and we have to have, this and
tomatoes
that.
all year round.
Tomatoes all year round, or I'm gluten free, so I have to have this. But nobody even put into concept of the carbs, the sugars that when you're eating gluten free or vegetarian. Okay, be vegetarian. I was raised 12 years of my life vegan, vegetarian, and my grandma died knowing I run a processing plant. But at the same time, it's okay. Don't eat, pre-made things like fake meats, Beyond Meats. Read the
stuff
labels.
They're putting in the label. It's hard. You don't even know what they are putting in, what enriched means. I mean, there's so much to unravel. It is difficult, but I think if you start the basics and you're using those whole foods and those building blocks, then you're not getting additives in there that shouldn't be there, and you're really finding a way to be. And that's the only thing really the consumer can do with masses is you can, for what is being bought and sold. And it's kind of bought and sold, you know, and whenever you put profiteering and profits into medicine, like we talked about, or health and education and food, and these things, it's a really slippery slope of how you're going to get the best information or, you know, best sort of, you know, output
Yeah.
of
On
this.
that panel 10 years ago, it was crazy to hear the outcome, you know, because the panel was, you know, we had a moderator that asked us questions and we each had to answer it. I was the only female on that panel. But at the same time, we also got questions from the audience. And, you know, a lot of it went towards Tim LaSalle and the Monsanto representative. But, you know, a lot of what came to me was, how do I see myself in the next 5 and 10 years? And literally, I have to tell you, in my notes, because it came up on Facebook Memories, but I pulled up my memories and I literally said, by then I'll be 50 and I'll be doing the exact same thing, running my little store. Hopefully by then I will have a lot more farms to choose from to be able to supply my store so I don't have to do it all. Mm-hmm. Because I would really like to not have to multitask every day. So in my notes that I said that, where am I at now? I am still multitasking. I am multitasking more now than I ever have. I'm still running my store. I'm still running my farm. I am still being the mother of my 9-year-old at that time. And my mother. Today's my mother's birthday, by the way. Wow. And she came with me.
Happy birthday, Mom.
I know. She would have been 69 today. So, but my mom and my daughter were sitting in the audience. And I giggle because in my notes, and I also put it on social media too, but on my notes, I wrote, "Watch out, world," because Savannah was like, "Mom, you should have told that guy that if he keeps eating that, he's going to be sick." And I'm like, "Savannah, you can't at 9 years old," right? And she's still that person.
Like that documentary, Super Size Me. They found that one out.
And my mom, who, you know, sadly died of medication issue, who was very avid about, you know, just living simple, eating good food. My mom had a sweet tooth. My mom had a junk food junkie mentality, but at the same time, she was overall healthy, right? Yeah. So, you know, to have her, you know, input on the way home. And I'll be honest with you, in my notes, and here it is today, her birthday, here I am talking about this because this coming up, you know, this week coming up to this has been the discussion of what is organic, what is small farming. Do we still have a place at the table? Do we still have a place at that panel? You know, because that was kind of I came away from Cal Poly that night knowing that a majority of those people felt that I was irrelevant. Majority of those people were there to learn agriculture, go back to the Midwest.
Bigger and bigger farms,
you know, or become an enterprise renter car dealership or a pharmaceutical rep, you know, because what is Cal Poly graduate, you know, and so, or go back to their family legacies, you know, that's at that time, that's what I was. So I was irrelevant at that time. And am I still? Yes, I am, because a majority of people are still buying food. They don't know what that label means. They are still buying food. They don't know who the hands that touch that food. That was my goal even then, and it is still now, to be able to teach people to understand the familiarity of food so that we can get rid of food insecurities. We can get rid of this idea of what is glamour and what is not. You know, beauty is inside. Beauty is not outside. Yes, I work every day to keep from wrinkling, and hopefully my children don't continue to give me as much gray hair as they are. And I still work out in the garden, pulling weeds and exercising to be able to keep my mind healthy. I have a 90-year-old grandmother that still works, that is still sharper than a tack, you know, and what is her secret to all of this? It just keep going. Yeah. When you stress out, you know, tomorrow's going to be something different. So why worry? Just keep going at it, you know? And that's her thing. Why do I still work? She doesn't have to, but she still works because she likes to be busy. She's social. She has a purpose.
You never slow down, you never grow old.
You're right.
And there's a lot of truth to that saying, I think.
So my notes in that of, where I'm at today at 10 years, yes, I'm still multitasking. It was a little taken back a little bit about it going, how do I stop multitasking so much?
Well, I think that was sort of the
can't answer
impetus of us getting together. You're saying, I don't want to do this alone. And I think at this point, you're seeing exactly where you have to start, kind of connecting and making it so that you aren't doing that. I think maybe, there's a real realization there of understanding that. And then the second part is really applying that and making, avenues into it. So I think that you're right. You're right there.
Am I?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're looking at some harvesting this weekend, just at the City Farm Slow, and really able to see an event they were putting on to promote the community, connections there with a ag reserve that it is for City of Slow. So one of the tenants has sort of a plot with a lot of perennials and permaculture stuff. So we were walking through, and it was just blooming like no other right now. And as one person, she's like, I can't really harvest all this. So it was like, wow, we really need to turn on some groups that could come out here and really get into this and use that up and bring it back to, their families and their loved ones to do things with medicine.
What's some
and
of the
other to
things?
it, so.
What are some of the things?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of like calendula, there's a lot of lemon balm, there's a lot of perennial type of
calendula
herbs and understory. The fruit trees were
What
going.
is calendula? Calendula is that beautiful orange and yellow flower. It helps rebuild.
Great for skin care.
It pulls toxins out of your skin. Bach
scrapes, all that.
recipes are all about steaming water and allowing fresh calendula flowers and getting a moist, warm towel and allowing your facial and just breathe in just by boiling a pot of water, putting those flowers in it. That's how much medicine is in calendula flowers. And it's crazy. I have that as a weed right now on our farm, and it's like,
weed.
and it's so beautiful, and it provides so much nectar for bees, also too. So yes, I mean, look at people that don't realize it's not just a flower. Don't just look at that flower. So okay, guys. So lemon balm. My goodness. I mean, mosquito deterrent, stimulation of purification.
Yeah.
It pulls things out of the blood. There's nothing better than lemon balm tea. Right? Again, taking those leaves, cleaning them, simmer, boil. Don't boil it to the point where you're going to lose all your medicinal. Just simmer it and drink the water from those lemon balm leaves, right? People think of tea as black tea or tea in a bag, right? But there's nothing better than
just putting something in a pot, hot water.
And to make a salve with that, just take all those leaves, mason jar, punch them in there, get the moisture out of it, but also just get that oil moving in that leaf and pour olive oil over that, leaves, put the lid on the mason jar, put it on the shelf. Guess what? Medicine.
Yeah.
What did we just make? We just made a tincture.
Yeah, it's a lot like with rainwater harvesting when people will be like, oh, is that really viable here? And it's like, yeah, you will have tens of thousands of gallons of water run off your roof every year. The ability to capture it is the biggest issue. Right. And so that's the thing here. There's so much food growing around us. There's so many things that we could, sustain ourselves off of and live well off of and thrive. But are we getting to them? Do we understand how to get to it? What is the access points to do it? Like you said, how do you get people connected to a farm without,
But people don't realize
liability
on
issue.
A small plot how much rainwater can be captured just by keeping healthy soil going.
Yeah.
And just, simple.
The passive rain collection.
Yes, the aeration and allowing soil to take in that moisture, and if you don't want to deal with the weeds, I see the news talking about get out and weed abate, because June 1st, you're going to start getting fined. All I could think of is why aren't we opening up that soil and why aren't we layering mulch? We need to work on our forests, right? We need to clean up our forests. We need to be able to keep the fires mitigated. But where's our mulch from?
And it only really happens like in government groups or government grants, and there's these small groups and crews going around when really we need to be teaching people more and more. And that's where we're doing a lot more accessible things with the public lands we can.
With mulch instead of constantly having to, sadly, most people I see are spraying right now or weed whipping. You know, I
Yeah.
enjoy weed whipping. And I think it's like, you can see all my scars on my legs because I don't even put covers on sometimes because I mean, there's just something about weed whipping that I enjoy. But, you know, they're constantly having to weed whip. I'm constantly having to.
Or harvesting, understanding what those weeds are as food
I'm
or
learning by
medicine.
mulching. And mulching is wood chips, right? Wood
Or
mulch.
compost blanketing.
Compost blanketing and just layering that over. It's crazy to me to see how limited weeds are once
Yeah.
I started really composting and mulching over these open areas, and how simple it was to plop a couple plants in there to then cover over again, you know, to be able to start this layering, rainwater capture, and then now medicine has
Yeah.
grown because I, you know, of course, growing an herb on there. You
Well, and
know?
that's where the animals are great too. You get the grazing animals through those
Mm-hmm.
spaces where we're doing mechanical work, but they're leaving fertilizers behind and they're changing the ecology when they're there.
The soil is so drastically different
so-
when I allow, you know, chickens to go first and then cows to come in, or pigs if there's an area that is just it's just not, I can't get rid of star thistle or you know, so I build a capture and allow pigs to kind of run under that, and then it's gone. There's no star thistle, you know. And so, but it's not just leaving them there, because if I leave them there too long, they then destroy the soil.
Then they're going to crack the soil.
I have to keep moving them,
Yeah.
you know, and not be able to, you know, pile up poo.
And that's where food, hopefully people would see that or be able to get that to market quicker. You know, those animals could be, you know, harvested and processed and, you know,
But at the same time,
put to
too,
work here.
you know, we've all think about farming and we all think about making money, right? And I'm very fortunate because I have, and I, you know, at times don't make money. I always say it's a revolving door, right? There's those days that you make money and there's days that
pretty
you
net
not.
zero.
Yeah, keep it going, keep it going. But at the same time, what if we were growing just enough to be able to supplement our gardens, to supplement our own food purchases, right?
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, I giggle because people are like, oh, I'm going to raise chickens because it's cheaper to raise chickens than buy eggs. No, it's not. But, you know, but it's managing. But it's
If you can stack the functions that the chickens do, you can make anything more cost
utilizing
effective.
time of differences in, you know, the importance of health and the importance of our community and staying healthy, overall saving money. You know, there's this whole concept of saving money instead of just spending money, right? And not everybody has that ability. You know, sadly, across the street from
We have to
our,
just change those equations. If they're too linear, it's, you know, this many animals or this many crops and this square footage. Those are equations that are never going to pencil out.
No.
You know, but like you said, if you're using the chickens to not only make eggs, but now they're doing weed control. Now they're, you know, repairing some land. Now they're growing medicine behind them. Now, you know, they're doing something even socially, you know, for people. There's so many ways that there's benefits to add on that just aren't always measured. And I feel like, you know, dollars and cents is the bottom line that everyone looks to. But whether you measure or not, there are social and environmental profits or payoffs, you know, to everything we're doing.
well, that's going,
that's what
going
maybe could
back to
help.
my orchard guys, you know, it's crazy to hear them talk. I mean, people will look at them and go, wow, you know, how wealthy they are, right? You know, but how many families are surviving off of their wealth, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, it's everything that they've
And the
done.
planet. I mean, look how much keeping just the land undeveloped in that kind of way is allowing there to be a, you know, return every year.
I asked one of them the other day, I said, so what's your son going to do with this? You know, if, you know, have we talked to you? He goes, oh, well, it's in a trust. Because more than likely he's going to sell it because he doesn't want to
Live
work
the
this
life.
way.
Yeah.
He doesn't want, you know, his wife wants to live in town and their
Mm-hmm.
children are in town. They don't want to be here.
The stewards
you know?
of that
Yeah.
land.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, he's like, he's going to make several millions off of this. And I'm like, yeah, but how long is that going to sustain them?
Yeah.
You
And what
know?
more is that going to do to their own community, to their hood? So it's just such a, you know, kind of slippery
Strange,
slope
huh?
again of just what is the, you know, kind of return on these investments and what is that, you know, sort of lifespan of those investments.
not
That's
that-
something we got to look
I'm not
at.
that person that could say, well, agricultural land should not be sold, right? I can't say that because I'm not.
Well, nothing's
But
absolute. You can't say
nothing is
never or
absolute.
always. Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, at 90 years old, he has to start really making those choices and making those decisions to be able to.
Unfortunately, he's the end of the line.
Yeah, and I mean, they
sounds
have their
like.
workers, and they're going to stay there. But where does it not go to his son? But the legacies of what's the thought of those 3,000 acres of mixed fruit?
Yeah.
The
Well,
thought of it is just
how does that
sad.
maybe start to have a new mosaic or tapestry of development where even like you were saying there with City Farm Slow, they have the development next door that was housing, that was commercial, that was hotel, and some kind of agriculture was left open. Was it well used? That's open for debate. It's just the model though of having land that could be there to feed a community directly. Maybe that's what developments could start to look like, where there's different uses, multi-uses of a piece of property like that.
Yeah.
Where it does solve a lot of
Let's hope
issues.
that putting this out there and continuing this conversation will bring in. You and I are getting those people
we
that
just
are
want
reaching
more
out, but we
people
need
to think,
we
and more
need
heads
to
are better than
think.
one.
Yeah, and I, like you said, I don't want to do this by myself. That's why, right there, is how do we better form as a community to figure this out? And there's
Need a
already
multidisciplinary team to even do something
there's
like
already things at 50 years old, Josh, that I know are gone that I won't ever see again, that my children will never be able to. My children got to experience it because they grew up with this with me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know that they're not going to. So I just feel sad for the community to know that there's now houses on a piece of land that once fed us, and yet now we're talking about changing our trade and how, China isn't going to be feeding us. Mexico, we just closed the doors, which I think we needed to, because the screwworm, which is a horrible infestation, if you look at the screwworm history in the 50s and 60s, almost destroyed our cattle industry in our country. Mexico still has the problem. I don't know how they've dealt with it. Obviously
like
they're
us,
still
we almost ruined corn for them.
Yes,
so.
I mean, that's exactly the same. So we're going to change that again now. So here we go, right? Like we have houses where farms used to be now, or strip malls, and
I think things just have to be so integrated into multidisciplinary. Everything that I, did through college, university kind of years was like the best courses were using 3 different departments teaching one type of course, or
because there isn't one versus the other. We all have to figure it out
really
together.
integrate over segregate these uses of our land and understand that it doesn't have to be so black and white, or it's not things are 100% bad or 100% good. And like I said, we're not even really great at using all the native things on this land because we didn't really give the native
Destroying it
cultures
before we even
any
recognize
room
it.
to show and share what was here. And those things are still here. Those people are still here. I think that starting at the, starting block again, or something there where we can grow things from the ground up of how to use everything around us. It's the only way that is going to make economic and social environmental sense going forward, because there's no way are these linear equations of the West keep working. Mm-hmm. We're on pesticide treadmills. We're on,
Just watched a special on the salted sea. Okay, so it's a man-made water reservoir, and they couldn't figure out in the 70s why people were getting so sick.
Yeah.
That were going. And my mother and father-in-law remember going there and enjoying this
vacation
beauty.
front,
Yes, and now nobody can even touch it because it's so toxic. And they couldn't figure out because it was man-made. It wasn't a natural flow in and flow out. It was all just captured, right?
Yeah.
It was all the pesticides. I mean, this show actually talked about how the Imperial Valley, from all the pesticides and the insecticides accumulating into this lake, and how badly it made so many people sick and die, and how they can't even keep fish in it now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, it's crazy to me. It's like, that's not that long ago that it was
Yeah.
created and it was destroyed that fast. And now they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so
Listen
it's
to your mother.
listen to your
Mother
mother.
Nature knows
Mother
best.
Nature knows, you know, and that's where, you know,
We gotta find ways to
we're
integrate.
smarter than this.
Yeah.
And I've been saying
Yeah.
this over and over, but that's another example of, oops, we're not, or that wasn't a smart idea.
But learning from those mistakes instead of brushing them under the rug. And I think
Right?
that's maybe something that's going on is certain perceptions or like really owning those mistakes or going back. And I feel like that's something even with, you know, social things, you know, just sort of racism or anything there. It's like there's so many ways to unravel these things if you just admit it. If you just go ahead and look in the mirror or look at those mistakes and say, hey, we need to take another path. And I think that having really, you know, Mother Nature's cue to me is always just sort of celebrating diversity, you know, and that becomes these biggest fights and socially, politically, all these ways. It's like, how do you really find a way to understand how to have overlap, how to have redundancy, how to have different creatures, different people doing different niches
Well, I'll
in
still
the same community?
I'll still be your friend after the show, even though you wore a Dodgers T-shirt to
Hey.
the show.
It's all right. This is the dividing line between Northern and Southern California.
Being a San Francisco
This is
Giants
it.
fan my whole life,
This is where
I'll still
it
be your
meets.
friend.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to be
Appreciate
prejudiced against your shirt.
Even if we win it all again this year?
You're not going
Okay,
to.
we won't talk about it,
We're
right?
not talk about
It's
it.
a little early.
You know, my brother married a Dodger fan, and he's always a Giants fan. So there's possibilities,
Hey.
and they have 3 beautiful children. So
If they can
there's-
make it work,
they can
we
make
could,
it
in
make
the same household, we could all.
we can do this, Josh.
We can do it
You
in the
know-
studio.
You know, but at the same time, see, I'm saying, no
That's
matter
what I'm saying.
what,
Diversity
diversity
goes.
is there. You know, I will still always be an Oakland Raiders fan, even though they are in Vegas.
That's my whole family. Yeah.
You know, I'm that person.
They're pretty Raider diehard.
Yeah.
That's
But
why we get along.
I
there.
I will take an oval ball game over a round ball game, but
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I like soccer the best.
I
I
think-
football, so that's pretty international.
you know,
Good. So.
I don't mind. I'll go to there's nothing more fun than going to a soccer
Oh,
game.
there's no more fun than playing one.
Yeah, well, that too, you know. So, alrighty, my friend, we
We did it. Okay.
We're at that time again, you
Okay,
know.
I'll
where,
shut up now.
No, I want people
I'm
to
glad we got
reach
here.
out. Look at Miguel puts my name and phone number up there, you know, and you know, text
Tell us what
me.
you think. Yeah.
Text
I know people
us.
are seeing it. I've been hearing that. I'm
Us
really
too.
happy to see this platform grow and really bring people in that can help us speak to more things, because I think, you know, we're opening these questions up just so that everyone has a chance to, you know, access and reach these points. It's not like we're trying to
We're even capable
push it
now.
any which way that we
Go
want.
on location.
Yeah, that's
you know,
gonna be fun.
you guys
We
want
got to
to.
do
You
that.
have a farm. You want to show us something. You want Josh and I to have this conversation with you at your farm. Let's do
or
it.
food, the end result. You know, that's
well,
the
you
best.
know,
That's
like,
the best place.
Miguel,
to,
I don't think would be a little upset if we'd feed him instead of just show up with
Yeah.
him. You know.
Well, I think that's where people really get it at that point. They're like, "Oh, this does taste good. Why don't we do it this way?"
Yes,
Huh?
this is why. And yeah, let's plan that. Let's
Okay.
let's go on location. Let's do this. Let's bring community better together. And by doing it, let's show them what we mean.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, my friend.
Alrighty, Joshua.
Go Dodgers.
Be quiet. Have a wonderful week on that note.
Yes.
And we'll be back next Monday.
Okay, see you then.
All right, take care.
Ciao.